Okay. Hi, I'm Sean Colombo, and I didn't realize how much he was into board games until I saw that presentation. He's actually beaten me at my own game. Hi. So that was embarrassing, but now I don't feel so bad. So I'm from a company that makes board games that exist into video games, and I have a longer talk about turn-based AI, and today I'm just going to give a small part about it, a small part of the talk, and that's the AI in the wild. So in the lab, AI can run forever, but in the wild, it's got to be part of your actual game. So the fun factor is really important. Your game is usually not play-by-mail unless it's extrasolar, but your game's probably not extrasolar. You have to keep it fast enough to be fun. Timeouts are very useful. Limiting the branching factor, that's basically putting a limit on how much the AI is allowed to think at any point. They don't consider literally every single move. Progress bars are very essential. People get really annoyed after about 3 or 4 seconds if you don't have a progress bar, but if you give them a progress bar, they can wait much, much longer. The AI being on a different thread from the UI is important, because if your game just locks up while someone's waiting, that makes them feel very frustrated. Even if all they're going to do is just spin the camera around and not do anything useful, it's painful to not be able to move. Move now options are good for impatient players, but there are some situations where they're bad. You want to keep move now options out of any game that has ratings or achievements, because then it makes those achievements not really worth anything if the player can just tell the AI to move now and make a dumb choice in a shorter amount of time. You have to keep the games human, or the AI itself. For randomness in Hive, we actually used an unstable sort, which means that any 2 items with the same score are not guaranteed to be in the same order. So when you play our game, you'll notice the moves, even if you're making the same moves, the AI will make different moves, and that's just because of the sorting we used. We didn't actually have to add randomization into it. The openings were scripted in Hive, just like in most chess programs, and we did randomize that a little bit. Failing in non-human ways is very frustrating to users. So we had a point at which, when the AI realized it was defeated, it would just move the first move it sees, and that would always be the same move. So it would just move this one piece back and forth. And that makes it seem like the AI is dumb, even though it's really smart and it knows that it's hopeless. So it's better to just make it look like it's still thinking, even at that point. So making your AI configurable has a lot of benefits to making it human. And what I mean by configurable is when you give scores to a board position, you'll want to have the scores be changeable. So what that means is, if you're playing chess and you want to give a certain number of points for which pieces are on the board, and then how many potential moves you can kill, the amount of points that you give for each of those scenarios you want to be configurable. And that lets you give personalities to your AIs, and that's more fun to play against. So you can have like aggressive AIs. So someone can play where an aggressive AI weights a lot more towards things that are attack moves than defense moves. It also gives you infinite configurability. So what that means is it'll let you change like how long the AI can think, and how many plies, which is like a term for a play that a single player makes, how many plies they look into the game tree. And that way, someone who really wants to play like the hardest game they can possibly get their hands on, they can have that, and so can casual players. They can have it their way too. So saving customized AIs has been like a really common request for even Hive. Another problem that can come up is if you teach the player how to beat your AI instead of teaching the player how to be good at the game, then when they play someone else, they're going to be really bad, and they're going to be kind of upset at your AI. So some examples where this happened is in Civ 3. A lot of players got good at cheating the AI. They just spent so much time on it that they would do things like trick the AI into sending all of its armies to one battlefront, and then just come in through the back and take over their lead city. And in Hive, we had a spider that took a long time to think, so there was actually a good way to attack a human, was to put all your spiders on the board and then waste the AI's time thinking about dumb moves. Real hardware is a huge constraint. The Xbox 360 is actually less powerful than this phone. So it was a lot harder for us to make AI to run on the 360 than we expected. We had 5 levels of AI, and the top 2 we had to cut from the 360 version, and we'll only be able to use them in the PC, Mac, and Linux versions, which are coming out soon. Another lesson we learned in the wild was that the AI took a lot longer than we expected. We've done some AI before, and since we're not reinventing the wheel, we're using existing methods. We thought it'd be fast, but I estimated about 40 hours, and it took several months. We spent about a month just killing garbage collections on the Xbox, because every time you allocate a meg, it does a garbage collection that can take 150 milliseconds. And we allocated about 150 megs a second originally, so now we don't allocate anything at runtime. And because that took so much longer, we didn't even have AI at the initial release, and we had to put it out as a free update later. So that's it for the In the Wild section. The whole presentation is online. It's at blgsi.com. It's short for Blue Line Game Studios /ECGC 2013, because that's where I presented this. And if you follow us on Twitter, we're just Blue Line Games. So that's it.